Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Take the Lead's virtual happy hour. I'm Gloria Felt, and I'm co-founder and president of Take the Lead. Our mission is to prepare, develop, inspire, and propel you and all women to leadership parity by 2025. So we're thrilled that you're here with us tonight and thrilled that you're here for this virtual happy hour, which I am really excited about. We have women's investment expert Manisha Thakor with us tonight. Now, I've known Manisha for a few years, and I've seen some of her presentations, and I will tell you she has a gift for breaking down the world of investments and helping you understand the power of the purse. Sometimes as women, at Take the Lead, we talk a lot about women's ambivalence about power. Well, if you think about it, money and power are kind of interchangeable concepts, and the same kind of ambivalence that we often have, or fear, or whatever you want to call it, around power, we often also have around money, because it's a lot of the same dynamics going on. And Manisha has the most amazing way of enabling you to just, to completely get beyond any of those feelings and really want to dive in and understand it. And we're going to jump into having that money talk because that's so critical and key to Take the Lead's mission. And we hope that you'll also check out our website for other resources as well. We have lots of courses and workshops and keynotes and all kinds of things that might benefit you individually or your organization, so that we can carry on this conversation. And we really want to stay in touch with you in a whole lot of different ways. By the way, Take the Lead's free virtual happy hours are just one of our signature Take the Lead Presents programs, in which we present either in person or online, and in this case obviously it's online, women who inspire you and tell you how they did it and how they made it, and give you really concrete tips and tools. You'll walk away from this with some very specific things that you can do to embrace your power to actually utilize the resources that you have, embrace how you manage and how you can have your money benefit you in a whole new way. And you know what? This is really exciting. I know this is going to really excite you all. When you register for a virtual happy hour in advance, you're actually entered to win something that is just priceless. Priceless. You're entered to win a Google Hangout mentoring session with me. So hopefully that will entice you always to register in advance for our virtual happy hours, because we do this every time, and it's really fun. I really enjoy doing it. And you'll also be able to get, free of charge, Take the Lead This Week. And if you're not already subscribed to it, please go on our website and subscribe to Take the Lead This Week. I'll tell you, every day I get emails from friends who say to me, I love your newsletter. It's the one thing I read every time it comes in. It happened to me again today. I was walking in the park with a friend, and she said, I just love that newsletter. When it's in my inbox, I open it up. It's always got the latest, best, short, snappy, fun, substantive news about women's leadership. And so be sure that you're signed up for it, because you don't want to miss a single edition of it. It's your weekly news digest, and actually our pledge is that you can read it in 5 minutes or less. So you can help us if you like that newsletter. If you like Take the Lead This Week and you like Take the Lead's programs, you can really help us out by spreading the word. So send it to your friends, tell 10 friends, post it on Facebook. Help us get the word out to ever more people, because that is how together we will be able to take the lead and reach our mission of leadership parity by 2025. And of course, you can stay connected with us on Facebook at Take the Lead Women, LinkedIn at Take the Lead Women. On Twitter, we are at Take Lead Women. And we have a hashtag that we love, which is hashtag 25, not 95, which means we're going to reach leadership parity by 2025, not 2095, as the World Economic Forum says. So join us in all those places, and in addition, we have a Take the Lead community circle on Mighty Bell. mightybell.com, and just check out Take the Leads circle there. And we want to stay in touch and talk with you everywhere. You know, we got Instagram, we've got YouTube, we got it all. We got it all. So let's stay in touch through whatever social media you happen to like. Most importantly, right now, tonight, let's get started. Grab your favorite cocktail, a glass of wine, a cup of tea, whatever you like, and let's start the conversation you have been waiting for. So, I'm so happy to introduce you to Manisha Thakor. Manisha, as I mentioned, is the Director of Wealth Strategies for Women at Buckingham and the BAM. She is an ardent financial literacy advocate for women and the co-author of 2 critically acclaimed personal finance books. One of them is called On My Own 2 Feet, A Modern Girl's Guide to Personal Finance. And the other one has the wonderful title of Get Financially Naked, How to Talk Money with Your Honey. That's a great topic, Manisha. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the topic of that book, and tell us how you got to be doing what you're doing. What was your path, and why are you so passionate about women's financial literacy?
So the title, Get Financially Naked, actually came to me while I was swimming in the pool, which is, I think, a great reminder to all of us type A ladies that self-care is so vitally important, and sometimes the biggest insights come to you when you're actually taking a break and taking care of yourself. And I say that, and that loops back into money, because a key reason a lot of us don't take care of ourselves is because we're feeling so financially stressed out. And the reason I do this work is that very early on in my life, I got some lessons from my parents that literally, they were simple, they were straightforward, and they changed my life. And I look at the resources that I have to deal with the inevitable speed bumps and air pockets that life throws at you. And I feel so fortunate that while many other things may stress me, I feel like I'm coming to these issues from a place of financial strength, and it gives me such calm and centeredness. And I see entirely too many women who, through no fault of their own, they just never got these lessons, are having that extra headwind of financial tension facing them. And that's why I feel so passionate about doing this work. And the last thing I'll say about why I love doing this work is that I've noticed, Gloria, you talk so passionately about the difference between power to and power over. And I see this again and again with personal finance, that when women are in a financially strong place, they use that power to change the world rather than take that money and use it as power to lord it over someone else. And the most amazing things happen when women are financially empowered. So that's why I do this work.
That is fantastic. I can see the passion coming from you. And I have seen some of your presentations, and I know that you have such an incredible way of telling women how to think about their financial resources at different stages of their lives. So, for example, if you're talking to a young woman who's, say, 23, 24, and she's just out of college, and she's just starting to make some plans for herself, and she probably is in a job that's not paying a whole lot of money other than what she needs for her basic needs on a, and so it's hard at that stage of life to start thinking about financial planning. It sounds like such a huge elephant to try to eat.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, if you're talking to a woman in her mid-career, it's a whole different thing. And then when you're talking to a woman who is nearing retirement, there are whole other sets of questions to ask. So I'm wondering if you would speak to how we think about money at those different stages of life.
Sure, and I think this really gets to why it's called personal finance and not generic finance or one-stop finance. It really is so dependent on, first of all, your goals and values, but second of all, where you are in life. So let's start with the first bucket. You're just starting out. the single most important thing that you can start doing at this stage is to learn to live within your means. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Most of us have absolutely no idea what healthy spending looks like, and that's why so many well-intentioned, hardworking adults, male and female, get themselves into financial trouble. And so the single best tool that I can give you to implement at this stage in your life is something that a woman came up with, Elizabeth Warren, now Senator Warren, back when she was a bankruptcy professor at Harvard Law, wrote a book called All Your Worth with her daughter Amelia, and in it she has a formula. She calls it balanced spending, 50, 30, 20. And it says 50% of your take-home pay should go towards needs, 30% towards wants, and 20% towards savings.
Ooh.
And, yeah, I know. I was going to say, and if that 20% number makes you want to chug your drink, I alter it slightly to include debt pay down under the argument that when you're paying off student loans and credit card debt, you are saving. You're saving that interest. But the point is, if you're not saving anything, you are dramatically off from what balanced spending looks like.
So I could maybe have those Stuart Weitzman shoes. I could maybe buy those Stuart Weitzman shoes that I really like sometimes.
So this gets to the real tough love part, which is that most of us are bombarded 24/7 by completely unrealistic media images. We see images of people in their 20s starting off and living in DC and New York and Boston on police and medical and legal dramas. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but none of these ladies ever have any frizz in their hair, no matter what's going on with the humidity. They all have perfectly tailored clothes. They've clearly had a mani-pedi and full blowout before going to the office. And my point is that if we actually live to the standards that we see portrayed as normal for starting out in the media, you have to earn, I think, easily 20 or 30% more than what starting out jobs actually pay. So my point is, don't look externally for a benchmark as to what healthy spending looks like. Look at the funds you have coming in. Take a look at 50, 30, 20. Start off with that 20% and include your debt pay down, knowing that hopefully down the road you're going to get closer and closer to that 20% being true raw savings. And if you think, Manisha, I don't like listening to you. If I were to live like that, I wouldn't be able to do the things my friends are doing. Now you know how so many people get in financial trouble because almost nobody is practicing balanced or healthy spending. So that's really the first and most powerful rule of thumb that I would share when you're starting out, is don't live like everyone else. Live within your means, and keep the 50-30-20 rule in mind as a long-term aspiration. Don't beat yourself up. Very few people are at it when they first hear about it.
Wow. That's a really great piece of advice, I think, for young women. So let's say you're moving into the middle of your career and you may be pretty close to hitting the peak of your earnings or the peak of your options in your life. You've got kids, maybe you're looking toward having to pay for their college. Does that same 50-30-20 rule apply there, or what formula do you have for women at that stage?
So 50-30-20 is something that ideally you're aspiring to throughout your earning years. The key really becomes when you start to step it up into that sweet spot stage of your career, to really make sure that you're maximizing your investment options. And so oftentimes I'll see two common mistakes. One is that somebody isn't taking full advantage of workplace either benefits, not contributing up to a match in a retirement plan, or sometimes firms offer financial wellness programs and folks aren't fully taking advantage of that. There are an awful lot of great benefits that can come to you through a workplace, and you're so busy, that's how you got into the sweet spot of your career. It's easy to think, I'll deal with it later, but you don't want to leave those plentiful benefits on the table. So if you are in an environment that has workplace benefits, go talk to the HR director. He or she will love to talk to you about how to maximize them, because so few people do. And so that's one thing you can do. Another really important thing that I like to emphasize for women, especially in that sandwich stage of life, because you often are balancing kids and potentially elder care, is that the maxim about putting your oxygen mask on first is so true. And while it may feel cruel to fund your retirement before saving for your kids' education, honestly, the single best thing you can do is make sure you're on solid financial footing. And so the second biggest mistake that I see women mid-career make after not finding the time to really learn about the benefits and options and things is putting other people in front of themselves. So I'd love to be able to give women permission to place your own financial needs first and foremost. It'll position you to be able to help so many more people down the road that if you let your financial situation become on the back burner.
So then what about a woman who's maybe nearing retirement age or is in retirement age? I've always heard that at that point you should be very conservative about your expenses, you should be very conservative about your investments, and yet on the other hand, there are those people who say, I just want my last check to bounce.
Yeah.
I want to spend it all while I'm alive. So what would you say to women at that stage of life?
So here's the great unknown. Once we move into retirement, we don't know how long we're going to live. It could be 35 years. It could be 5 years. And at the same time, we also don't know what the financial markets are going to do. We don't know what inflation or interest rates are going to do. There are so many unknowns. So what you want to do is focus in on the things that you can control. Some of the things that you can control are items that you mentioned, keeping your expenses reasonable. I think the best thing that you can do at this stage is really get serious about making sure that the way you are spending your money is maximizing your joy. And this is a useful tool for any stage of your life, but I think it's particularly important when you reach this critical life juncture. And by that I mean really taking a look at how you're spending your money and making sure that there isn't leakage on there that's pleasing other people and not pleasing you. And that's one of the first steps that you can do on kind of a softer, more qualitative level to make sure that your funds are going in a direction that maximizes your happiness. The other thing from a purely technical standpoint that I would say is that the 10 years leading up to retirement and your first 10 years in retirement, that 20-year window mathematically is right up there with your first years out of school as one of the most important financial places in your life. And the decisions you make leading up to retirement and immediately after retirement can have a big impact mathematically. If you do them right, you have much more of a safety cushion and a runway. And so I wish I could give people a one-size-fits-all answer on how your investments should be structured at that stage, but it really depends on your individual willingness, ability, and need to take risk. And in terms of when you are actually in retirement, the most important number to get right is what's called your withdrawal rate. If you start withdrawing too much early on and markets are not favorable, that can really crush a retirement. On the opposite side, if you do the reverse, if you're so frugal and you deny yourself joy and markets are good, you've basically left a lot of happiness on the table. And so I feel like on one hand I'm stating the obvious, but on the other hand, what I'm trying to give folks is a framework and a sense of the urgency around becoming informed around these topics. And a book that I absolutely love on this topic that will give you some really in-depth points on how to think about the pre- and post-retirement stages is called Can I Retire? And ironically, it was written by a gentleman in his late 20s, which I think is funny because it's one of the best books I have ever read on retiring. It's less than 100 pages. It's less than $12 on Amazon. The author is a CPA named Michael Piper. And I agree with everything, literally everything in the book, which rarely happens. So Can I Retire is the book that I would recommend reading to get the nuances for your particular situation.
It sounds like I should have read that book a while back. I have a question for you, Manisha, from Sarah Hancock from Arizona. And actually, it's kind of apropos of the advice that you're giving for different stages of life. And I think what she's thinking about is how do we instill these kinds of skills and understandings in people from a very early age. So her question is, as a person in the financial industry, what is the best way for me to help increase financial literacy with the younger generation, especially school-age children? Got some advice for her?
Oh, I love that question. So this is one of the great things. Women are again, using that knowledge, which is power, and using it to make some change. So there's a woman named Alyssa Weinstein who's written a wonderful book about how to teach kids, school-age kids, and I think actually could probably work up through high school, and from a very young age. You could probably start in first or second grade, about money through using fictional jobs. And it's a wonderful book called Earn It, Learn It. And I think that the framework she uses, and it's one that she was hoping will be taken into schools around the country, would be a wonderful one to use and to reach out to your local schools and see if they would be interested in having you present to the students. If the schools aren't interested, if that's too sensitive of a topic, the Girl Scouts have badges in financial literacy, and I know would probably very much welcome local troops having you come in and speak to them. Girls Inc. also does a lot of work around financial literacy, and I'm sure they would very much welcome a local expert coming in. And I think Alyssa's Earn It, Learn It framework can be one that's really helpful for a wide range of things.
I guess we should give a shout out to our friends at Go Girl Finance also. Great website, Go Girl Finance. Take it out.
Absolutely. For women of any ages, everybody on this happy hour, please go to gogirlfinance.com and sign up for their newsletter, just like Take the Lead's newsletter. People constantly tell me that they so enjoy having Go Girl pop up in their inbox. My friend Karen Efron founded Go Girl. She's a successful executive, mom of 3, and she's really passionate about making personal finance real for women, and it's a wonderful resource.
So there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. And while folks are sending in more questions, I want to just hop onto that and give a little more useful information about Take the Lead events and learning programs to help make you a better leader, feeling more powerful in your financial life, and advancing your career, and just generally making your life better from the bedroom to the boardroom. Please check out taketheleadwomen.com frequently for an update on events that are happening, what's happening with our virtual happy hours. You'll see those kinds of schedules. And also you'll see all the different ways we can come to your organization or your company with one of our programs. And here's what I'm really excited about right now. I'm not the only one who does training for Take the Lead now. We have our Take the Leaders. We have other trainers who are able to come, and they live in various parts of the country. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you want to carry on this conversation further, if you're a women's initiative in your company or your professional association wants to get more of the kind of really hands-on training with real meat and real knowledge about how you can embrace your power to and become financially literate and learn to negotiate and all the things that we need to be able to do in order to lead our best lives. I'm right in the midst right now of doing some redesign on my signature online certificate course called 9 Leadership Power Tools to Advance Your Career. If you go to taketheleadwomen.com, you'll be able to click on it, and you'll see that I'm going to teach it again starting in January, and it's a 4-week-long course. It's going to have an extra bonus week on it this time. Ooh, that was a surprise. I wasn't supposed to tell it yet, but you take it online on your own time, but I'm interacting with you personally all along the way. So do consider it if you want to get a good, healthy dose and start the new year right. You can go ahead and start planning for that right now. I also want to tell you about some upcoming virtual happy hours. On November 11th, Leslie Grossman will join us to discuss how you can use networking to create relationships that boost your career. And Leslie is the world champ networker, let me tell you. In December, we have a special holiday treat for you. Not 1, but 2 virtual happy hours. On December 2nd, we have Dr. Nancy O'Reilly, the founder of Women Connect for Good. And she's going to talk about how women can win by working together. So she'll just kick that whole networking issue up a notch and talk about how we can win in whatever we're trying to do by working together strategically and specifically. And then we'll also, on December 9th, we'll have Suba Berry, Vice President and General Manager of Working Mother Media. Now, Working Mother Media has been the leader for many years in getting work-life balance issues, getting flex time in companies, rewarding companies that have good, healthy workplace policies, that particularly those that benefit women and families. And I actually just wrote a piece for them. I'd like you to go look at their website, workingmother.com, because I have this new campaign. I think we should put parenthood on our resumes. I don't think anything teaches you more. So we're excited about having Suba on December 9th. And then in January, to really start the year out with a bang, Dr. Marsha Reynolds is going to talk with us about how to get positive results from difficult people. We all have some of those in our lives. So do trot on over to taketheleadwomen.com and learn more about this great lineup of speakers that we have coming to you, and to sign up. And while you're there, go ahead and join all our social media outlets, because we want to stay in touch with you anywhere and everywhere. But for now, let's go to some more questions for Manisha Thakor, financial expert and all-around wonderful coach and financial manager. So Manisha, here's a question from Allison in Washington. What are the key differences that you observe between men and women when it comes to money? When it comes to money, what have you observed about the differences between men and women and their money?
Okay, that's a fun question. So broadly speaking, what I would say is both genders are equally overwhelmed and confused by the topic. Women, we admit this, and broadly speaking, men, not so much. And so when you hear men confidently talking about finance, do not let that throw you. I cannot tell you how many times I have overheard conversations of men speaking about investments, and they're saying things to each other that are about as sensical as, yeah, I took my nose off this morning and stuck it on my head. And the other guy's like, yeah, and I did that with my ear, and they're nodding and almost saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. So everyone is confused because the financial landscape has gotten so much more complex over the last 30 years, yet financial literacy is not something that's broadly taught. That said, I do see 3 significant differences between women and men. With women, and I referenced this earlier, I've noticed that the role of money in our lives tends to be different than with men. Women really tend to use money to do things, whereas for men it is very much of a success metric. And I think part of the reason the financial services industry has gotten as messed up as it has in many ways is because it is run primarily by men, and they think about money and investment products and so forth as trying to always be the best, and rather than helping you figure out how to make sure that your money helps you live your life the way you want to live it. And I think that's why so many women have not been particularly thrilled with the offerings from the financial services industry. The second thing that I see with women is that I cannot ever remember a time where I've talked on investing to a group of women where some woman has not asked me about impact investing or socially responsible investing. And I literally cannot remember ever being asked that question in front of an all-male audience. So we clearly are viewing the actual act of investing from a more holistic standpoint. Mm-hmm. And then the final piece is that we have more headwinds than men do. We still earn less on the dollar. We spend more years out of the paid workforce caring for children and elderly parents. And we tend to start saving and investing later on in our careers than men, partly because we just don't talk about it so much with each other, so it's really not on our radar. And to be honest, I actually personally think the reason we start later is because when you are early on in your career and dollars are tight, it costs way more for a woman to groom than a guy. He can get by with one suit, one shoes, 3 ties, and he's good to go. And we need 5 different outfits or whatever, and literally there's a grooming tax that I think also hits us early on. But you stir all that up, and we both have equal level, studies show this, of knowledge about personal finance, but our confidence about our levels of knowledge are not the same, and that's particularly worrying to me because that last point I made, we women have some actual headwinds with earning less, living longer, and spending more years out of the paid workforce.
Well, that's all really interesting, and in some respects all the more troubling when you think about the fact that, for example, microcredit organizations almost always like to give their loans to women entrepreneurs because the women will build their little businesses and they will pay the money back. Whereas they have found that if they loan the money to men, it tends to get frittered away. And whereas the women will reinvest it in their families and their communities, that's not so much with the men. So how is it that women may have this greater sense of social responsibility and family responsibility and yet have less to work with? I mean, what are some of the big issues then that as we are thinking about how we can help women become not just more financially literate, but actually raise themselves up with the whatever resources they happen to have? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think the first thing is to incorporate financial well-being into your definition of self-care. So I think broadly speaking, money is a topic that a lot of women just don't talk about. They don't talk about it with each other. They don't talk about it, period. Whereas, if you take a look at 2 guys in college, and I went to an all-women's college, and we were very aggressive in terms of our goals for life. But did we chat about money with each other? No, not so much. And you listen to guys at a younger age and they are talking about it. So I think a key first step is just the awareness that we need to self-educate on it. Tactically, what does that mean? I think that for every woman, what you should know or strive to get to the knowing point on is A, where you are right now financially. What do you earn? What do you spend? The difference is savings. What do you own? What do you owe? The difference is your net worth. And ideally, your savings and your net worth are positive and growing. So where are you right now? That may sound ridiculously simple, but I meet so many people who are so stressed about their finances simply because they just haven't looked. They don't want to look. And oftentimes when they look, they find out, wow, it's not as bad as I thought. Or, okay, it is as bad as I thought, but now I can at least do something about it. So step 1, know where you are. Step 2, define where you want to go, and then that enables you to seek out professional guidance or teach yourself to identify the all-important step 3, which is what actions do I have to take to get me from where I am to where I want to go? It's that simple. There are those three kind of silos or buckets that you work with, and I think that we just don't think about it in that kind of crisp clarity, because once you think about it in that kind of way, you're like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to go, and now this is my to-do list. It may not be fun, it may not be enjoyable, I may have to spend less, I may have to earn more, I may have to make some tough trade-offs, but once we know, your mind adjusts, and then you're able to take action. It's that lack of knowing, that ignoring it, that ironically, many women will tell me, I don't want to lead a money-centered life. I don't want to focus on money. It's just money. But when you don't focus on it and you don't know those three buckets for yourself, where you are, where you want to be, how to get there, you end up having a money-centered life by definition, because it just creeps into every empty crevice of the unknowing.
Wow, that is a very powerful statement you just gave. I'm seeing my whole life flash in front of me, and I'm feeling like I have to reveal to you that I am a woman who never wanted to think about it, never negotiated for a salary or compensation until I got to New York and had to figure out how to pay the rent here. I was just so glad to have a job that I liked, and that that I could actually get paid for doing what I loved. I feel very blessed that I have been able to do that most of my life. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me, I thought, was when direct deposit was available. And then I really didn't even have to cash a check. The money just went into my bank account, and I didn't even have to look at it. I didn't even have to look at a pay stub. So I am your poster child for exactly what you're saying about what women very often don't like to do. But what I like to jump into as a consequence of some of that is, one thing that we know from the data is that women on average lose about $500,000, and if they're professional, college-educated women, that number could be $1 million or more dollars in the course of their lives, because they don't think about money, and they don't prioritize it, and they don't negotiate for their compensation. So what should we do? What should we do to solve that problem in terms of getting women not only to recognize that money is important, but then also to know how to get it?
So check out the incredible work that's being done over at She Negotiates. Lisa and her gang are doing some incredible work over there. And what we see consistently, I'll never forget this. I saw Sally Krawcheck, or heard Sally Krawcheck being interviewed, and she was talking about the time when, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Sally, has been one of the most powerful women on Wall Street. She was the chief financial officer of Citibank. She was the president of Smith Barney. She was the president of Merrill Lynch Global Wealth Management. And she was talking about her time at Merrill and how men would come through, and on a 50-to-1 ratio, she estimated men were more likely to ask for raises than women. And you don't ask, you don't get. I ran my own wealth management practice for a while, and I can tell you from a business owner standpoint, as much as you want to do the right thing, if somebody doesn't ask you when you're sitting in the position of having to make the tough P&L decisions, you're not going to just offer it up on a plate. It's just not how the business world works. And so I think anything that you can do, any kind of education or self-development you can do around learning how to negotiate, because it's so vital, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately we women have a currently thinner tunnel that we have to kind of push ourselves through, because it's not enough to just ask, we have to actually ask in the right way. Guys can ask in any old way and it works out, but we have to ask in a slightly, well, not slightly, a much tighter band. But from a financial standpoint, I cannot emphasize enough, if you take, I'll give a quick example and then I'll wind down this point. If you take Jane and Joe, and they both start at the same job, but it's a job where where Joe negotiates and gets, a 10% higher starting salary or 12% higher starting salary, and both Jane and Joe save the same amount over time and they earn the same investment returns simply, and neither of them ever get another raise, simply as a result of that very first conversation. The numbers are pretty darn close to that $500,000 you just referenced, Gloria. So it compounds. It's enormous, and I just want to say that it helps. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we'll be empowered to do it. When I was in my big, heavy earning corporate days, I never once asked for a raise. Never, 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 because I was paid very well, and I felt grateful to have the job, and I thought, who am I to ask for more? I'm already getting so much. And I guarantee you I have left on the table significant sums from not having asked. Now I do ask, and every time my armpits get sweaty and I feel like I'm going to vomit, and it's not pleasant. And not every time do I get a yes answer to it, but I have been surprised more than half of the time I have gotten more than I would have if I hadn't piped up at all. So I think we just need to keep talking about it and keep learning the skill set, and God bless deodorant, because it's uncomfortable.
Well, if it's even uncomfortable for you, that should make all the rest of us feel not quite so bad about it. Manisha, I've heard you talk about what we call holistic financial planning, and where can somebody find out more about that? And what can you tell us about that concept? It sounds wonderful.
So. Holistic financial planning is going to an investment professional and having them help you define those 3 buckets that I referred to earlier on. Clarifying where you are right now, where you want to go, and identifying the very specific actionable steps you need to take in order to get there around your saving and spending levels, around your investment decisions, around your insurance coverages, making sure you have the right amount but not too much, and around tax, making sure that you're being tax smart, and around estate and legacy planning, making sure you have the appropriate documents in place. Somebody that's helping you with that whole picture is providing you holistic financial planning. Where to find it? The short answer is I would encourage people to go to the BAM Alliance. BAM stands for Buckingham Asset Management, the BAMalliance.com. Or you can reach out to me on my website, moneyzen.com. And I can help connect you to resources that provide this. The one thing I want to say, broadly speaking, is that you would think that sounds like a pretty good offering, and you should be able to get it in a lot of different places. But there is a dark side to the financial services industry that has kept many of us from getting exactly that kind of holistic planning, and that is the difference between the suitability standard and the fiduciary standard. So if you don't mind me going off on a little bit of a tangent here, Gloria, I would love to educate listeners on what it is that I'm referring to here.
I'd love to know myself.
Okay. So it turns out that, if you're a doctor, you take the Hippocratic Oath. All doctors, pledge to first do no harm. But in the financial services industry, there is not one general overarching standard that everyone who calls themselves a financial advisor must adhere to. There are 2 different standards that one can adhere to. Standard A is called suitability, and it's what about 80% of the industry is. And standard B is called fiduciary. So what is suitability? Suitability says basically that the advice and guidance that is given to you as a client by a financial advisor must be suitable for you. And on the surface, that sounds logical. But in reality, what that means is that the advisor's first level of loyalty is to their firm, and their second level of loyalty is to you, the client. Mm-hmm. And as a result, that can make them recommend certain products or offerings that are suitable to you, but not necessarily in your absolute best interest. The other standard, fiduciary, which is what about 20% of the industry is a standard that requires legally the advisor to put the client first. So the first level of obligations to the client, and then the second is to the firm. Independent firms that are fee only and product agnostic. And you would say, well, why the heck isn't the entire industry under fiduciary? And many legislators agree with you. Every 5 years or so, legislation gets introduced to require all professionals who call themselves financial advisors to adhere to a fiduciary standard. And lo and behold, every 5 years, out come a bunch of lobbyists for firms that operate under the suitability structure to keep that in place. Because if they were forced to adhere to the fiduciary standard and recommend what's always in your best interest, their profits would go down. So when you ask what holistic financial planning is, it's a really wonderful concept. I personally believe it can only truly be delivered through a fiduciary model, and so I encourage people to only work with firms that hold themselves up to a fiduciary standard. And I want to be clear, I have a vested interest in saying that because I work for a firm that adheres to a fiduciary standard. The reason that I do is because I think it's the right one. But whenever anybody's talking to you about their money or their offering, you want them to be honest with you about what their incentives and potential conflicts of interest are. And so a simple way to start out is when you're seeking guidance from anybody, ask them, do you adhere to a suitability or a fiduciary standard? And I would argue that given there are plenty of quality people that offer fiduciary, why would you ever want suitability?
Great. The important thing is ask the questions.
Yes,
ask the questions and don't just accept without asking the questions first.
And so will have to tell you honestly, and they will. They're good people. It's a bad business model, but they're great, well-intentioned people working under it, and they'll answer it honestly.
Great, wonderful, thank you. That's a hugely helpful tip. And speaking of tips and takeaways, one of the things we always do with our virtual happy hours is to ask our guests to give people who come to our virtual happy hours a very specific tool or tip that they can take away with them. So you have something you call the True Wealth worksheet. Would you like to describe it, and then we'll tell them where they can find it?
Yes. So in this concept of holistic financial planning, one of the things I love to talk about is defining true wealth for you personally. What does that really mean to you? Because it's so much more than just a number. And so this worksheet can help you identify for yourself what is really important in your life, what's working, what's not working, so that whether you choose to self-educate on personal finance or work with a professional advisor, you have in place the things that mean the most to you, so that when the tactical financial steps come about and you are asked to pay off XYZ credit card or add $50 more to your 401k or IRA or make this change to an investment and it feels boring as all heck and you don't want to do it, you can look at the Defining True Wealth worksheet and see what those kind of boring but necessary action steps are going to get you in the long run.
That sounds like a wonderful, wonderful tool. We're going to put it up on this website, and if people will just look to the right of the video, they'll be able to click on the graphic and download that Defining True Wealth worksheet that Manisha has provided, and it sounds like a very, very useful and helpful. And it's not that you're buying happiness, and what we know that money can't buy happiness, but I heard you address you want your happiness quotient to go up from your use of money, and I've been thinking about that and wondering, of these things that you're telling people about focusing on money as self-care and empowerment and being careful and all of those kinds of things, and how do you get that happiness quotient in there?
So there are a couple different ways. The first is just it's a mindset, and I love this phrase that boundaries can set you free. When it comes to your financial life, that may sound kind of odd because we think about any kind of financial boundary, a budget is really constraining or defining. But what I find is that when you make a commitment to say, just as I want my eco footprint to be a responsible and healthy one, that I want my spending to be, I want the way in which I use the money that my life's energy helped me earn. I want to use that in a conscious, mindful, responsible way. And the boundary that I have is the money that I have to spend. You start making smarter decisions, and I find that you start making decisions that are more in line with what truly brings you happiness. And so I use this example a lot, but when I ask people, start writing down for a month what you spend money on. And the point is not to add it up at the end of the month and beat yourself up. It's to take out a highlighter at the end of the month and highlight anything you spent money on that didn't bring you joy. And some of those things will be things you have to spend money on, like utilities, but that you might be able to take some time to negotiate and find a better rate. Some of those things are things that you just didn't have any fun with. They were drinks out with people that made you feel bad about yourself or food that made you fat. And so what I find is that when you use joy as your ruler for what spending decisions you have in front of you, that you can make much more mindful and conscious decisions, and it's really liberating. It can help you shed things from your life that just aren't working. And so that's what I mean by this concept. And I'm a voracious reader. One of my favorite books on this topic was written over 20 years ago now. It's called Your Money or Your Life. And it's the place that I first heard about this concept that when you work, you're expending your life's energy for money. And so when you spend money, you are literally spending your life's energy. And in the book, they have this concept where most of us work about 2,000 hours a year, 50 hours, 50 weeks a year, 40 hours a week. And so if you take your household income, and I'll just use a round number, let's say $50,000, and you divide by 2,000 hours worked, that's $25 an hour before tax. So if you see something that costs $250 and you feel like you have to have it, you can do the math and say to yourself, wow, my before tax earning is 25 bucks an hour. That means I got to work more than 10 hours to get that item or experience. And you can say, is that really worth 10 hours of my life's energy? And then you might say yes, or you might say no. But the point is there are no broad things, none of this, like no lattes, because I can nurse a latte, a $5 latte, I can nurse it for 2 or 3 hours. So my enjoyment factor out of that is huge. For someone else, it may not make sense. So my point is there aren't broad, don't spend on this, don't spend on that. It's up to you. You get to use joy as your ruler, but by associating your money with your life's energy that it took you to produce that money, you can make a more informed and more conscious and mindful decision.
So I'm feeling pretty good here because I'm one of the few people who doesn't buy lattes on a very regular basis. So I save up all my latte money and then I buy shoes. So that's what gives me happiness. We all make our choices. We all make our choices. Well, you know, there are always people who say, if I only had more money, things would be better. If I only had more money, everything would be great. What I think this may be a good last question to go with, because there is always the question of what is ever enough? Does anybody ever have enough? I mean, we've seen studies that show that the more money people have, in essence, the less generous they are.
Yeah.
So what, you know, if I only had more money, I'd be happy. What do you say? I mean, what's the reality of that?
So it is flatly not true. I can tell you this unequivocally because I work in a world where I routinely meet people who are, and I'm not joking when I say this, earn well over $1 million a year and are spending, you know, $1 million plus and are absolutely miserable because the math doesn't work out and they're stressed up to their eyelids. And I meet people who make 50,000 or 75,000 or 100,000 who are really financially aware, and they're living in total alignment, and they are just bursting with joy and abundance. And so there is no, once your basic needs are met, I have observed in a professional capacity that there is literally no correlation. And what I find is that when people think that when I have more money, I will, dot, 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 they're living in this state of suspended existence and in this state of resistance against life, and they're not present and they're not joyful, and it's that mindset that actually can be so damaging. And so what I have found is that when people are, I'll backtrack for a second. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was on a plane, and I had just come back from spending my junior year in college in England, and I was reflecting back on what I had learned, and I drew this drawing. It was a triangle, and at the top I wrote simplicity, and in the bottom left-hand corner I wrote small joys, and in the bottom right-hand corner I wrote financial independence. Mm-hmm. And that was really my framework for what I wanted my life to be full of. And the least happy I've ever been was when I was earning the most money. And the most happy I've been, ironically, has been times when I've been traveling in a roller bag for 3 weeks at a time with very few possessions, and I've just felt rich with experiences and so forth. And so I want to say that more money will not solve the problem. A conscious, aware, mindful approach to incorporating your personal finances the same way you'd think about any other element of your interaction with the broader world, intellectual, spiritual, physical, charitable, that's what will bring you enough.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think that's a great way to start winding this conversation up. Manisha, I cannot thank you enough. And we have one other question that we always ask our guests, and that is, what is your personal go-to song or quote that gets you powered up, and in particular to help achieve leadership parity by hashtag 25 not 95?
Oh, honestly, and I cannot remember if this was Emerson or Thoreau, I always get them confused, but it's simplify, simplify, simplify. I find that by extracting the unessential, I have the energy and the power to focus on what truly matters. So simplify, simplify, simplify would be my...
Wow. Would you like to tell people once more how they can find you if they want to learn more about your work and what you do and connect with you?
Absolutely. My personal website is MoneyZen, MoneyZen. And oftentimes people ask, well, can I work with you? I don't work with individual clients directly, but I am the Director of Wealth Strategies for Women at a wonderful organization. We can help individuals with $80,000 or more in investable assets. So if you're in that camp and you're looking for an advisor, you can reach out to me and I can connect you with someone. If you are under that asset level, on my website I have a resource page where I list a number of other wonderful entities and organizations and books and articles that can help you get your finances on track in this kind of mindful, money zen-like approach that we've talked about here today.
Well, I'm going to try practicing it, and I think you have just given people amazing advice, and in such a lovely, human, real kind of way. And I think that's often what is missing in the conversations that people have, or how they think they're having conversations about money. So I just want to thank you again, just from the bottom of my heart, for being with us here tonight at Take the Lead's Virtual Happy Hour. Take the Lead Presents, one of our signature events, is our virtual happy hour, and we want to thank everybody who has joined this evening. It's been great having you. Stay in touch with us. Subscribe to the newsletter, Take the Lead This Week, for sure. And please mark your calendar for November 11th, when we'll be back right here with Leslie Grossman, who will chat with us about networking and what you can do to leverage the relationships that you make to boost your career. Contact us anytime. We're ready to come deliver a keynote or a workshop or a course for your group or your company. And do connect with Take the Lead every single day. There's always something going on at taketheleadwomen.com or on any of our social media where we are Take the Lead Women, or except for Twitter, where you can find us at Take Lead Women. So from everybody at Take the Lead, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you again, Manisha. We'll see you next month, and cheers to you.